Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Zach, and here we talk about overlanding, gear, builds, DIY, all sorts of stuff related to modifying your vehicle. Typically, I'm modifying my 4Runner, but really some of the stuff we do on the channel could be translated to tons of other vehicles. So today we're going to be talking about a modification that I get a lot of questions about, and should I do this modification? So we'll kind of jump into that in a little bit. One thing I wanted to quick mention is if you're looking kind of at my fit here, these are the clothes that are made by the Normal brand. It's a small company that's growing to be quite a large company. They're a family-owned business based out of St. Louis, Missouri, I believe. And this is just one of their summer collection shirts. I'm a big fan of these. You know, I don't do this overlanding stuff full time. I'm not living life on the road full time, so there are times where I just like to dress up in normal clothes that don't look like, you know, you're backpacking or things like that. And I really like these. I also like these shorts a lot that they sell. They're like a super stretchy sort of material that you could wear, you know, I don't know, golfing, hiking, swimming, all these sorts of things. They're kind of an all-purpose type of short. So yeah, maybe go check them out. I'll link them down below. I believe I have a discount code with them. I'm not quite sure how it exactly works, if you have to like click the affiliate link and then it's applied. I don't have a dedicated code I can give you. But yeah, go check it out if you're into clothes or you like the sort of stuff. They sell a lot of really like neutral and cooler colors, which is kind of my thing. I like grays, greens, blues, maroons, those sorts of things. But yeah, go check them out. But without further ado, I think probably a lot of you are aware of this, but if not, I was at C4 Fabrication for a little while this spring and did a couple modifications to the 4Runner. It's kind of no surprise, and maybe you've clicked around to the vehicle by now, but we're going to be installing high clearance editions. The great thing now is I actually have a discount code of C4, so Overland Engineer, or OVLDENG is kind of the short for my code, will save you 5% at C4. And check the description, because sometimes that code might change, just because like there's some algorithms that can sometimes pick them up and then get you a bunch of qualified sort of uses that makes companies annoyed, and it's not really me helping out the company. So it might change, just remember that. But yeah, you can go and save 5% on anything on their website, whether you got a Tacoma, 4Runner, whatever, it should work site-wide. So a little bit about this, we're gonna kind of have to trim the bumper a little bit on the front. These are not compatible with your vehicle unless you have a LoPro bumper from C4 Fabrication, so just remember those are some things to do this sort of install. If you're wanting to watch my LoPro video, I'll have it linked somewhere up here. But yeah, C4 Fabrication makes absolutely insane armor. It's going to protect your vehicle when you need it to, and maybe when you don't think you need it to. Today I just saw on social media actually of a guy who took a line on a trail that was completely unintended. He kind of lost a bit of control, and his whole front LoPro got absolutely smashed, and it saved his whole entire engine. He was able to drive out and had no coolant leaks, no nothing. But yeah, you never know when you're going to need armor, whether you're purposefully doing something or you maybe hit a deer or get rear-ended or something like that. So consider armor like that. A lot of people also sometimes will talk about aluminum versus steel, and as a lot of people like to talk about, you know, you kind of have to pick your poison, what you want. Lighter weight may be great, or maybe heavier duty is better. Steel, sometimes you'll have to re-powder coat it a few times. Aluminum, you'll likely have to replace a few times. So it just kind of depends on what you want to do. If you hit an aluminum type of armor one time, typically that means it's toast, but it at least protected you during that time. So I know a lot of people who have gone through multiple sets of aluminum skids, because that's just kind of the name of the game. And unfortunately, they're more expensive, but if you've got that money and you want a lighter weight option, then obviously that is a decent alternative. But C4 basically makes only steel products, and I like the peace of mind driving in traffic in a metro area, and then also off-roading around big rocks. So with that being said, the reason I'm installing these high clearance editions is I think they add additional protection, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end of the video. I have this tendency to talk too much, so let's jump right into the unboxing and let's get these installed on the vehicle. So we've got our high clearance editions here. This is not an overwhelmingly large number of parts that come in the high clearance edition kit. We've just got the two wings, so to speak, and then plates for mounting them to the LoPro bar. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove
So I'm doing is I'm going to remove the saran wrap off of these and use it to protect my headlights for removing my cover. All right, so each side has these 2 plates. Then we've got this whole bag of hardware here. So the bulk of the hardware is just the hardware used to sandwich this plate and the high clearance edition on the bumper. So we've got 5 bolts per high clearance edition. So I'll just quick lay all those out here. The rest of the hardware is used for these little bumpers. All right, so we've got that set aside. Basically all that's left is these 4 button head bolts. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 nylon locking nuts. And then we've got these 4 red rubber bumpers. So where these go is on the front of the high clearance edition. We've got this space where your plastic cover is going to sit, but it's got nothing to bolt to. So what C4 has done is basically this bolt here holds these into place kind of nicely so that you can have these back spacing bumpers to push the cover forward and kind of suspend it in place through some tension. So I'm going to show you how to install these bolts on each of the high clearance editions, and then we can take these sandwiching plates over to the 4Runner and get them installed. All right, so the general procedure here is we take a bolt, we're going to put a nut on the bolt. So bolt and nut on the back side, then thread it through, put another nut on, and then thread on these bumpers, which have kind of a nut built into them. So how I'm doing that kind of cheating is these are nylon locking nuts, so they're a little bit hard to just spin on. You can't just like do it super quickly. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try and hold this and kind of cheating by, okay. So the deal is in theory, you don't want this nut too far, because what we're gonna do is you're gonna end up moving it along this bolt. Well, I guess you could use a combo wrench and slip it over the end of this bolt. So actually it won't be quite as bad, but I just wanna make sure that I don't have to sit here and do like 6th or 8th quarter turns as I'm tightening these down. There we go. These bolts get a little hot, so watch out for that. All right, 2 down, 2 to go. So got 4 bolts prepped. Now what we're gonna do is thread them through the bolts or nuts that have been tacked on to here. You might have to clean some powder coat out of these threads. Sometimes that'll happen. I tell you what though, this little brushless 3/4 inch impact has saved me so much time doing modifications on my vehicle. Probably the first half of all the videos I posted on my channel, I did everything manually by hand, and gosh, it just takes so much time. And there's so many smaller tasks that you can do with power tools that really save you a lot of time. So I know that seems pretty obvious, but I was kind of scared to use power tools. I didn't want to break stuff. Okay, so I've started putting this bolt on. You're gonna have to kind of hold it in a bunch of different ways, whether it's with the head or maybe you'll need one of these wrenches. Nice thing is for 7/16 nuts, you can get this over the button head. So there's tons of ways to do this. You could use an extended for some of this stuff too. So I'm kind of just guessing on how far this needs to be threaded on before I can do the red bumper bolt. But what I'm gonna do here is let's just use the extended. There There we go. So that should be plenty of threads. Now we're gonna put the button, the like bumper nut on here. Finger tighten that on as good as we can, and then this one we're gonna back. All right, so yeah, we've got both bolts on here now, and they've got a bit of adjustability on them. So this, let's see here, let's just loosen this a little bit. But what we'll do is we'll kind of push out the cover as much as we feel like we should, kind of once it's more in place. So this one is done. This end here is done. The other one is done. Now we just got to do the other high clearance edition, and then we can get installing them on the vehicle. So yeah, overall though, really not too difficult. Okay, so we're just gonna start here by taking off some of the stuff on the front bumper here. So the whole front cover just needs to come off, and we'll leave the C4 bumper on for now. Depending upon how you have your engine bay set up, there is a big plastic trim piece that goes right here, and you'll need to remove that. It's just a bunch of clips. There's one clip here, and then one clip right here. I've just removed those. They look like this. So use a little flathead, sneak it under there, pop the clip up. Once you get those removed, you'll have to come in here on each side of the bumper and remove a couple of these clips and screws. There'll be a screw that goes in on these spots. Get a flathead under here to pry this open, and then these little parts will pop off. This clips in to this whole system under the headlight here. So you just have to give it a light yank and pull that out. If you're like me, you might have your fender liner zip tied up. If not, you might have to crawl underneath and remove a couple fender liner screws. This is my fog light down there. Since I'm running the Diode Dynamics fog light kit, I just had to unplug the fog light. You might have to unplug your OEM fog light. So that's kind of the bulk of prepping this. We're gonna pull off the cover here. This top portion removes separately if you want it to, at least on the TRD Pro style front grille. So I'm gonna pop that off, and then we'll be able to remove my Raptor lights, which are mounted up a little bit unique. So there's just a couple of plastic tabs that need some encouragement. They're kind of right along here. There's 4 of them. This one, this one, this one, and this one. They kind of clip in right here. Once you pull this off, then it really gives you a lot of nice space to work in here, and allows you to get this cover off. So there's a couple clips under here that we're gonna need to remove so we can get the rest of the cover off and expose the C4 bumper so that we can bolt on these high clearance editions. A couple of different ways we can do this here. What I like to do is I like to use an extended reach socket, or the longer sockets. I don't know what they're exactly called. All right, that's loosening. Grab our drill here. Just like that. Makes real quick work of it, and I just dropped the nut. Well, good thing we're pulling off the cover. I'll go find that later. Jump over here to the other side. It's just 2 bolts. It's pretty straightforward. So it's a 1/2 inch nut. These are the 2 nuts, 1 for each side, and then I've got a couple washers in between. What this harness does is, it's just these 3 lights are hooked up all together. There's a bolt on each end here. I just got this piece of aluminum from Home Depot or Menards, pretty cheap and simple. I've got a couple washers stacked inside of here. So we've got 2 washers in each of these spots, and then I've got 1 washer underneath. I was able to recover the washer on this side. The washer on this side I still need to go find. So kind of dig some of these out here. But yeah, so originally, if you have a 4Runner that's not, really modified like mine, there's just 4 clips through here, and I just decided, well, heck, I could probably use a couple of these holes to mount up these SSC1s, and these 2 clips in the middle are still important for holding on the cover, so I just use a couple washers to shim that bracket higher than the heads of these clips. Grab our flathead again here and just Pop these plastic screws off, or sorry, not screws, clips. And now this cover should be completely loose, just kind of sitting here. What I have to do is, I could remove the bumper, or you can just kind of pry the heck out of this and it will sort of work its way around. So, okay, so at the bottom here, there is one other bolt I had to remove. Now it should be completely loose. So I've tried to protect my headlights the best I can. We're gonna just pry this like crazy here. Hopefully we've got enough space here to get this out. Okay. I'm gonna try and grab it really wide and just pry backward. All right, so I've got a front camera. And that wire does not have like a quick release on the harness, which is pretty annoying, but to be expected for a pretty cheap camera. So what I've been doing is I take it, pull it off, and rotate it like that. So it seems to work well enough. Okay, so now we've got the front all exposed here, and everything's a bit of a mess. Probably should have taken the 4Runner through a car wash before doing this, but whatever. Okay, so we've got it all exposed on the side here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna put a plate on the inside of the bumper, and then the wing will bolt on the outside. I need to figure out if we're still gonna use these clamps here or if I need to remove this little bracket. But yeah, shouldn't take too much to get a lot of this removed. I might also need to trim this fender liner a little bit. But that should be pretty easy, and then we should have kind of the space we need here now to put on these high clearance editions. So these brackets are a nice little piece that comes with the C4 bumper to hold your cover in place. And as you can see, I kind of modified the Viper cut for the high clearance editions to retain this little piece so I could bolt that still in. Before I get this all squared away, I've got to actually cut this the rest of the way. So I'm not quite sure exactly. You can use an angle grinder or a Dremel. Heck, you could probably even use like a tin snips if you really were in a pinch. But I need to cut that off before I start installing stuff, or else I'm gonna have a bit of a tricky time getting this to fit. So I'm gonna remove that bracket there, and then remove the bracket over here, and we should be good. One thing I will mention is I have a washer tank relocation system called the Aqua Tank from Rago Fabrication. So I'm not going to be installing the washer tank reservoir skid that C4 sells, because I don't have that washer tank even in here anymore. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm going to do here. And in the video, C4 kind of cuts almost all of this away. I actually have trimmed my fender liner to zip tie up to the mounting point right under. So if you can see here, this is the Diode Dynamics fog. I've got some zip ties to kind of hang it off of here. So the fender liner protects a lot of this still, and it probably doesn't look the best to certain people, but honestly, I've kind of liked having it, and I keep it for now. But I'll probably be removing it fairly soon, but it is an option if you want to keep your fender liner. It's kind of a way that I've found to do it. And then I just used a heat gun to kind of bend the plastic in some spots, and it seemed to work well so far. All right, so that was a pretty easy process. All I did was use some tape to line this up and cut the rest of the angle. I need to get new edge trim because this stuff has been molded and adhered to this piece of cover. So show over here, here's my piece of tape where I use that to kind of cut that off. So once we put on these high clearance editions, we're kind of no way to go back. I'd have to buy a new cover if I want to take these high clearance editions off and, you know, reconnect the bumper the same way that I did in the past. All right, so basically all this is good to go. Looks pretty good here. Now we just need to prep the high clearance editions to be bolted on. The bulk of the hardware that comes with it is primarily just for bolting these to these plates, and it spans over this piece of metal here. So as you can see, there's all those cutouts. That's what the cutouts are for. So I'll kind of lay out the hardware and show that to you. All right, so I got this side kind of mocked up here, and what Caleb talks about in his install video is these should be 1 inch from the top of the bumper and then roughly 4 3/4 inches from the bottom of this like painted finished fender. And what I've noticed is when I do those dimensions, it seems to be good down here, but then it's like 4 to 4 1/4 up here, which seems too small. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at this panel here and lining it up perfectly with this panel. And I'm hoping that that solves this issue, because I don't know if maybe the angles have a little bit of variance or what, but I'm eyeballing it to make it look as nice as possible with this panel. And then, like they say in the video, you know, twist these all the way back. And I've got maybe 4 1/2 to maybe 4 and I don't know, 5/8 up here. I'm hoping that's enough, but I'm kind of just trying to figure out how I can get this to look good and still have the clearance for the cover. So that's what I'm doing. I'm not purposely kind of disobeying the installed directions, but I think this should work okay. I also trimmed some of the fender. So one thing I noticed is this fender, you can actually tuck on the inside of the, I just got lucky or something, I don't know. If you cut the fender liner to keep maximum fender liner to zip tie up to the contour of your Viper cut, you can kind of tuck it right inside of the high clearance edition. But I have a feeling it'll rub a lot, and I think it'll probably ruin the powder coat, so I cut it back and basically just went to the edge of where the high clearance edition starts. So that's kind of what I did. I know I talked a little bit about the fender liner earlier, so I just wanted to mention that. Okay, so I think I've got the high clearance editions on correctly, but one thing I will note is the measurements that they talk about on the bumper make sense, you know, being 1 inch off or so, if that's how you want to measure it. But up here, this is going to depend on where you place these bolts on your frame. So as far as I can tell, I'm pretty sure my bumper is probably mounted 1 inch or 1/2 inch higher than maybe they did in the install video. And I don't think that's necessarily good or bad. Probably the lower the better, as far as keeping it away from this line through here that goes above your winch. But anyways, I like where mine's placed right now. It's nice. So I'm trying to figure out kind of the best way to do this, because the skid plate for C4 has to marry up with the bumper nicely, and I don't know if that's going to be a problem or not, but I'm trying to figure out here kind of what to do. So way back when I did my Viper cut, I thought I did it exactly to the C4 template, but I'm kind of wondering if I cut it a little bit farther back from the line so that I had a bit of tolerance when I ended up doing this. So what I've done is I've marked 1/2 inch back from this whole entire cut, and I put down tan tape for the bottom, and then I'm going to put blue tape at all of these little markings, and that should give me a nice line to cut along on here. So that's kind of the plan. I'm going to cut a little bit more off, and hopefully this will fit nicely. All right, well, after a lot of trimming and test fitting multiple times, we've got a pretty good looking fitment going on here. I don't have edge trim on here, but I'm trying to decide whether it's really worth it or not. I think my C4 bumper is mounted like almost 1 inch higher than normal, maybe 1/2 inch, and I thought about lowering it, but I also just like kind of how high it sits, so I just left it and continued to trim. And basically my rule was I wasn't going to cut higher than this flange area for the fog. So far I kind of like how it looks, and I just need to put the rest of the stuff on here and kind of see how it turns out. Worst case scenario, I'll pull it all apart again and continue to trim and adjust. But it's not a long install, but depending upon how OCD you are, it may take you longer, or shorter. So yeah, I really like how it looks, and we're just gonna throw all of the grill back on and just install as a wrap.
Well, that's going to be a wrap for this install. I hope you like the look of them. I think they're pretty sweet, and honestly they add more protection than you think. That cover up front there could probably pretty easily get beat up, cracked, or bent, or just sort of destroyed or damaged when you're out on the trail. I think these high clearance editions are really going to provide some extra support, and they're going to provide a little bit of extra protection. So buying a new bumper cover and getting it painted and all that's pretty frustrating. But if you accidentally catch a stick in your front wheel, or you kick a rock up or something like that, or you take a line you didn't intend to, I think these are going to provide quite a bit of support and protection. Despite them looking sort of low profile, they're really quite beefy. And yeah, I like the look of them as well. I mean, if you're going to viper cut your vehicle, you're already cutting at this angle, and so it's really a sharp look. If you are interested in viper cutting your vehicle, I actually have a video on that as well. I'll link it up in the top somewhere, and that is how I cut this sort of initially, and that might help you in figuring out kind of the easiest way to make this cut. But there's a lot of videos out there showing how to use the C4 template to make a viper cut, and yeah, I think it's a pretty good approach because they give some good guidance on where to cut that line. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all the support. I'll catch you all in the next video.